it's that time of year, and I got a lot of phone calls, especially ones that, asking me to renew my insurance and a number of things, so I had to talk to them before I could just jump into my board meeting. So anyways, thank you for joining us for the special meeting, or this is the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for March 24th for the Reno Sparks Convention Visitors Authority Board of Directors. And with that, I will have, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll? We have a new clerk this morning, too.
Temporary.
Temporary. Come on, you don't want to do this forever?
No. Chairman Lucy.
Here.
Mr. Esquago.
Here.
Councilwoman Bybee. Mr. Chapman. Here. Oh.
Here.
Ms. Keel. She's on Zoom.
On Zoom.
Mr. Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Sheevy.
Here.
Ms. Faraza.
Here.
And Ms. Silver.
Here.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We have a quorum of the board. With that, Mr. Kennedy, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Actually, I did that a little bit backwards, but that's okay. All right. Madam Clerk, we are on to public comment. Comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. They can be on matters on or off the agenda. Is there any public comment this morning?
No public comment.
Oh, we do have one. Okay, we actually have a few.
I apologize.
If you'll state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Skin Farley.
I'm Gina Lopez.
All right, go ahead.
Good morning, and thank everyone for your time today. I am the business manager for E720. My incredible partner, Gina Lopez, who is actually the brains and beauty of the operation too, is here with me. Our event is Battle Axe and Tracks Music Festival. It's to be held October 1st and 2nd at Rancho San Rafael Park. The annual festival this is the first time for the annual festival, is a rock and blues festival concentrating on legendary guitar playing. Our headliners this year include Grammy Award-winning artist Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Samantha Fish, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Buddy Guy, along with 13 other national touring artists and well-known local performers. The event includes a Thursday night guitar competition for area bands to compete and to have a spot in this incredible lineup. Everything about our event from its conception, including the dates picked in the shoulder season, to the lineup, to marketing, sponsorship, and partnerships, has been focused to bring out area visitors to the festival and put heads in beds for the entire weekend. Using Ms. Lopez's 25 years of experience in event organization and the last 8 on arts and music events in our marketing, we not only spotlighted the experiences that we're going to have on site at the music festival, but everything that Northern Nevada, Reno Sparks has to offer for everyone. This strategy was proven successful as we initially targeted 2021 for the event. We postponed that event. We postponed that event in 2021 due to the Delta variant in COVID. At that time, we had ticket sales where 40% of our ticket sales were for out of area, including 18 different states. So if you project those numbers with our targeted ticket sales this year of 4,000, that's 1,600 visitors that will be coming to the area in October. Based on the RSCVA average per person per day expenditure of $760 across all expenses, that projects to $1.26 million injected into our local economy in the first weekend in October. We're very excited to be working with the Row as our property partner, as well as New West Distributing for our craft beer garden at the event. We are also extremely excited to be working with the Nevada Military Support Alliance, who will receive a portion of our total ticket sales to support their mission in appreciation of Nevada's men and women of the armed forces and their families. We have gained full approval from the Washoe County Commission and Parks Department, and I'd like at this time to say a special thank you to Colleen Wallace-Barnum, Park Superintendent, who her and her team have been exceptional to work with in this planning of the event. We appreciate the board's commitment to recognizing the importance of our experiential events like Battle Axe and Tracks and tourism for our local economy. Thank you again for your time and consideration today. We appreciate you.
Thank you very, yes.
What he asked is, are you asking the board for a sponsorship? Because you might want to hang out, we're discussing special events later.
Yes, that was the plan also, so.
Are you asking for a specific ask?
So it's Jess, let's wait, can we wait until the item, because I believe they can hang around if that's the intent. So we can have some conversation then. Thank you very much.
Your accent that you can play guitar pretty well.
I can fake it. Let's put it.
Thank you. If you'll fill out a comment card as well, please, for the clerk. Mr. Stewart.
Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Good. So a couple things as a member of the chamber.
Bill, can you state your name for the record?
Oh, yes. William T. Stewart for the record.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lucy. So as a past public servant with over 25 years of firefighting in the county, I just wanted to address you guys. Fire is a big issue for everybody. And as we move forward with this season, it's going to be hotter and drier. A lot of issues coming forward. In the past, I think that I want to bring to your attention. I know this is the only time I can get a chance where I can talk to the county commissioner and the mayor as well as Sparks, and so that's why I'm here. So the Collin Ranch 2011 was a huge event. Hopefully you guys all remember that. We also had the Blue Ribbon Committee report in 2014 talking about how we all need to work together, and so that's something that I've talked about numerous times. Getting regional participation, not only for the city of Reno, but also for the county, as well as Sparks, Incline, where I started my career, Airport Authority, everybody working together to figure out public policy so far as fire prevention and emergency services. We have dispatch now with Washoe County and REMSA in-house, and that's great. But we need to do more, and that's something that I'm very passionate about. I've talked to the county commissioner. I've been in front of the city of Sparks as well as the city of Reno. And so I'm trying to do whatever I can to make sure that that happens. I'm now working for a private contractor doing defensible space work. We've done work up in Montreux and Arrow Creek and Somerset and all throughout the county. We're working in California as well. I don't have to tell you how important fire prevention is. I was on the side of suppressing fire for 25 years now, and I'm on the side of educating and preventing it now. So that's what I'm really here to talk about, as well as, you know, it says visitors authority. So who would want to visit our beautiful place if we have a torch fire or a Tahoe burns down? For hopefully it does not happen. And then also I've brought in numerous events here, the Firefighter Combat Challenge at the Atlantis, as well as the Grand Sierra Resort. I've done that as well. So I see this community growing, and it's getting bigger, and the calls for service is getting that much more important. So how do we fix this problem? It's hopefully elected officials like you guys sitting down and hammering out an issue that needs to be addressed for years and has been a topic of conversation for decades. So that's my kind of elevator pitch. If you have any questions, I have business cards. And on a side note, Mayor Sheevy, I know there's a generator. You guys were involved with the governor about $100,000 for businesses and stuff like that. I'd like to talk to you about that if you have a chance. So our company is going to have a ribbon cutting up in Verdi. We do mastication, tree work, all kinds of different opportunities to help improve properties. So if there's anything we can do, we're here to help and make sure that communities survive and are prepared for wildfire as well as any other emergencies. So thank you for your time. God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Really appreciate it.
I do. I have lots of cards.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Is there any further public comment this morning? Seeing no further public comment, we will close public comment and move on to item C. This is approval of the agenda for the March 24th regular meeting of the Board of Directors. Are there any changes, Mr. Harris, that you have this morning? All right. I have no changes to the agenda as presented. At this time, looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
All right. I have a motion from Councilwoman Bybee. Do I have a second? Second. I have a second from Mr. Esquaga. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we are on to item D. This is the approval of the minutes of the March 4th Board Retreat and Strategic Planning Session and Special Meeting of the Board of Directors. The minutes are included in your packet from the March 4th meeting. If there are any changes or amendments that need to be made, please notify us now?
Yes.
Madam Ms. Silver.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
in relation to the minutes on section G2, which was the discussion of possible renewal of the operating agreement between the RSCVA and City of Reno, it does state that I voted aye, and in fact, along with
Ms. Keel,
Member
you were
Keel,
no.
I voted no.
Correct.
So if we could correct that.
We will
thank you.
correct that record. So that motion did pass, but that was a motion of 7-2, with Ms. Silver being in the opposition. All right, any other changes to the record? All right. Seeing none, we'll make those changes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes with the changes presented today? I have a motion from the mayor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Silver. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are on to our presentations for the morning. I will turn it over to Mr. Harris to give us a facilities operation plan update. Mr. Harris, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your packets and in this information, I'm going to go through the main part of the presentation, which is about 6 or 7 slides, talking about the facilities transition plan. I would like to recognize, as we begin this, that as we started this facilities transition plan, hopefully this allows me, I might have to get up. The clicker is not cooperating at the moment. Where is this? It is now frozen, so give us a second here. Still frozen. RC, if you can come out here and help us. We have just not cooperating at the moment. Of course, it worked during when we rehearsed it, but it's not giving us any cooperation right now. So please bear with us for one moment.
Always the case, right? It won't click through.
The clicker.
It's clicking.
There we go. Okay, so this is the team that worked on the project for the transition plan, and this is within your board packet. So I just want to be able to point out a couple things here. 24 different people worked on this transition plan, made up of RSCVA staff, members from ASM, Ben, Molly, and even our folks at On Strategy who helped quarterback this. The document that I'm reviewing to you on the screen is the most up-to-date document. What you have in your packets has been tweaked a little bit because it's a living document, and we're going through this transition plan. So there's minor tweaks up on the board. This is the most recent information, but again, a lot of folks participating in this, and we tackled all these different areas as part of that plan, whether it's employee retention and hiring, client management, IT transition. All this information is part of our transition plan. The plan itself, there was a budgeted $815,000 for this plan, which was approved first by the augmentation of the subcommittee and then by the board. So this is actually built into the plan itself. There's key criteria for success that we looked at and what we've been working towards. Number one, come June 1st, that the facilities are staffed appropriately. The food service vendor is operational, and we're going through that process right now. The other vendors are either assumed rebid or responsibilities, and we've reviewed all of the vendors, and there's only one vendor that we have to go out for an RFP on. Everything else that we can assume those contracts from the current provider. All clients with events as planned, and so our sales force has a plan to reach out to every single client in a timely fashion to make sure that transition happens orderly and that the facilities are operational. So those are the key milestones and areas that we were looking at. So if we look at things a little differently, we look at historical. Pre-ASM, there were 123 employees with 155 part-time. Levy was our provider. Saver has been our provider for food service during the current, and then as we move forward, the new contract will be decided at a special board meeting that we have in April around that. So what we're doing is, one, by bringing this in-house, we want to minimize our losses and be more efficient. We're looking to add dedicated staff, which we've talked about, and specifically in the sales and marketing area to support that. Streamlining our operations, obviously for better communication, and obviously at the end of the day, enhance customer service so that our clients are happy. So from this, we have critical milestones, and as you can see, we're working through this right now. Very happy to share that Trent is now our VP of Facilities, who we've promoted. So congratulations, Trent, on doing that. And then we have basically 4 more boxes that we need to be able to check. So certainly, I mentioned first week in April, that liquor license is important for us. Conduct onboarding of staff in May, and then the last week of May, update with the branding. We've actually reached out to the folks at ASM, and they've been very helpful and cooperative. And so the last week of May, we will be transitioning all of the nomenclature and logos and everything else back to in-house. This is a timeline that you can look at in the very back of your board binders this morning. It's a much larger one, so you don't have to look at an eye chart on the screen. We blew it up for you, so you have that. But basically, there's 3 different areas that we're focused on. Obviously, people, contracts, and operations. And some of this stuff has been actually going on before February, but this is the process that we're going through leading up to, and then there's the dotted line Conference of Mayors here on June 3rd and then beyond. And so we have a whole process, again, divided by those 3 areas that we're tackling. And then challenges and mitigations. These are the areas we want to make sure that we anticipate and that we attack. Certainly, one of the things that we need to make sure, and that's the timely approval of the liquor license once the new vendor is approved. We do have a backup plan that Mike Larragetta, who's heading up this project, has already reached out to make sure that a local provider can help in case that's not improved in time. Employee exits, we got to make sure that we manage the staff, right? And I'll talk about that in a second here, about how we retain folks and add people to make sure that we're there. There's some PERS challenges that Courtney and Dee Dee are absolutely heading up to make sure that we're there. And then we got to make sure we add a new IT person. And that IT person we've actually hired, and they start on Monday. So those are the key areas that we want to make sure that we work towards and we get to. I just want to point out a couple things. You know, a lot of this comes down to staffing. And certainly, this is not a Reno issue. This is a nationwide issue of staffing and employment. So let me give you a brief update about this. As of yesterday, you know, obviously we've promoted Trent to VP of Facilities. 81% of the jobs have been advertised. So we've listed them. They're in the market. They are out there. We're talking to the people across the street numerous times, whether it's face-to-face, emails. We're still staggering that leading up to, so as we hire the folks, we can fill in the backside, but 81% of those jobs have been posted, and we've actually hired 30% of people today that will be starting on June 2nd. Let me correct that. Hired or offered positions to 30%, and then an additional 42% of those positions are either interviewing or reviewing resumes. So we're on top of this. We've got the process moving in all directions from engineers, marketing, sales, and what have you. So from a staffing standpoint, we know this is important, and we're tackling this. The areas that it's been posted is not only with the ASM employees directly and through our website. We've had partnership with the Chamber who's posted that, and we've made that public through Paycom and our websites as well. With that, that's the end of the presentation, and I'll open it up to anybody who has questions.
Thank you, Charles. I do appreciate that. Mr. Harris. Any questions for Mr. Faraz? I saw your hand first.
Charles, on the staffing, how many positions are we going to have open? I mean, for the June?
There's a total of 80 positions that we've identified that we're hiring for. And as I said, 65 of those positions have already been listed that we're going through. And 30% are either hired or they've been offered positions so far. And so in our plan, between now and June, we will publicly list the remaining positions to be able to hire those folks as well.
And the 65 positions, are those, do you anticipate those starting that June 1st?
Everything will start June 1st, if not before. As you saw in the transition budget, we've got some contingency money for people that we're able to bring on. One of the things that we've done is I reached out to ASM and we supplied them a complete list of all the employees, and we said, okay, there's a non-compete that we have. who's off limits to start before that, and who can we start on that second. So we're working with them to make sure that we can onboard some folks as soon as possible.
Okay, and then where are you listing those positions, so if we can get the word out too?
Yeah, as I said, we listed on our website through Paycom. We've had a
Is the
partnership.
RSCVA
On
website?
RSCVA, we've listed that. Through the chamber, we've also promoted that, and through direct contact with the ASM employees.
And then on the food vendor contract, Mike, where are we with that? Are we out on the street? Have we gotten bids back yet?
So-
We had interest.
Yeah, let me tackle that. So what we have is we had a deadline of March 17th to submit. We went out to both local and national vendors. We did a one-day tour with folks. Our consultant and Mike have done a great job getting us there. We've actually had 3 submissions on a level for this contract. And as Ben Kennedy pointed out to me before, we only had 1 the last time. So we're doing much better to make sure that we have diverse options for that. Those 3 providers submitted 8 packets each of their proposals. And they are, I would say, combined about 600 pages worth of information that we have digested. We had an internal committee meet. We had 7 people on our staff review the proposals, rank the proposals, and come to a conclusion. The board has asked us for 2 potential candidates that we would have at an April meeting. And we are now going to be calling references and doing background checks so that first week in April that I can make a recommendation to this board to appoint and start negotiating with a provider.
Do we have any locals on that? I was
So
curious.
no locals submitted as a main vendor, but I would say two of the three providers that submitted talked about subcontracts with local providers. As a matter of fact, I talked to one last night at a meeting who said he was honored that they reached out to him for consideration for this process. So there will be local providers that are used as part of the final decision when we come back in April.
And just a last comment, I know at our retreat, I had wanted full staff reports. I just want to thank all of staff. I think this is very well done. Charles, to you and the team, I like the specifics on the transition, and specifically, I was just seeing the page on the interviewing and where you guys are in process. So I know this is a huge undertaking, and you guys really doing a great job putting it together.
Thank you. It's a team effort. Team effort.
Quick question.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Chair, thank you. You mentioned liquor license. What are you hearing back on that timeframe?
Yeah, so working with Ben Kennedy, we actually called Doug Thornley at the city. We've gone through that. It's not, Ben, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a city issue, it's an FBI issue that needs to be approved. And so what we're looking for, and the chair and I are talking to try to come to that agreement for the next meeting that we can do that. We're looking to try to get that submitted the very first week of April so that we get that liquor license. And then, Mike, if you want to talk about the backup plan that we have, if there's any hesitation to be able to get that awarded in time, Mike has already reached out for some backup.
So Mike Lettergutta, Vice President of Sales, for the record. So if we see a delay in the process of obtaining that liquor license, first of all 3 food service providers that have bid are well aware of the process and what it takes in order to move forward, and they've obviously done this in multiple jurisdictions around the country, so they're well prepped in that area. We reached out to a local caterer who already has a license who would be willing to step in should we get into a bind.
Okay.
Okay. And then the other thing, and I don't see it in here, is it in here, Charles, is the breakdown of the 815 on the facilities plan? Is there a breakdown on that?
The
it?
financial,
I don't, the 815?
Yeah, the 815 was part of the augmentation. That was broken down.
I don't have it, so.
I have,
Yeah, in the slide that we had here, Mayor, we had, it was broken out between salaries and benefits, materials and supplies, contract and professional fees, as well as contingency. And that contingency money is offered for incentives to stay for some of the employees that we're looking at.
Okay. How much does that come out to?
That came out to $150,000.
Okay, and then.
Can you put the slide?
Yeah, I don't
can we
have
put
it.
that
I don't
slide
have it in
back
my
up?
packet.
Mayor,
So
can
everybody
you put that slide up as we just transition back?
Page 3.
Sorry, Mayor, we're putting you through the ringer today.
It's okay.
You said it was gonna be easy. Oh, here we go. It's that. Page 3. There you go.
Yeah, go ahead. Can you hear me now? No, I just wanted to see the full breakdown on the entire 815,000.
Mayor, it's on the board there.
Yeah, I see it there.
This was something that we went to the subcommittee for the augmentation, and they reviewed that and approved that total.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Mr. Murdoch.
Mr. Chair.
Actually, Mr. Chapman, I had Mr.
Thanks, go
Chapman
ahead.
first and then Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you.
Sorry.
On page 5, where we talk about the pre-ASM, ASM, and post-ASM, can you remind me, when did ASM take over the facility on this chart here?
What was that? I don't recall the exact year.
18?
June of 2018.
Great, thank you. Okay, correct. That's right. So my question on this one is, pre-ASM, we're talking about 155 staff, including part-time, 177. ASM was 63 full-time, and we're potentially talking about 120 full-time now. Did we have staffing challenges? Did ASM have staffing challenges at the time, and was that 63 full-time employees not enough to facilitate the whole, or to manage the whole facility? So I see we're getting back to the levels that were pre-ASM for full-time.
Yeah, it's a great question. There were some staffing challenges and some exits that went through that. Our goal was to get back, and we heard very clearly from the board that we needed to up our staffing needs. Specifically, part of that 120 that we're coming into now is augmenting our sales and marketing staff to make sure that we're outselling those facilities. So that's part of our plan to get there.
Thank you.
Mr. Murdoch.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Are we going to use all the 815,000? Is that all gobbled up with, those numbers real?
Every number we give you is real.
Okay.
Mr. Murdoch. We don't make it. If we're able to save, if we're able to save anything, there is some contingency in there. I mean, obviously, we don't know where we're at. That really depends upon where we are. So we'll come back and report to the board at a later time once we have a clearer picture. But those are real numbers, and I would never question Courtney Jager and the work that she does around that. So,
Courtney, are you?
Yeah, this is really generic. I'd like to see it in more in detail if you have it.
and that's something that we did at the subcommittee. On the subcommittee, she went through a very detailed proposal, which they endorsed. But if the board wants that, we're happy to provide that.
Okay. Thanks, Court.
All right. Any other questions from the, Councilwoman Bybee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a question, more of a comment. I really like the, what are we doing differently? Because obviously we need to do things better than we have before, especially coming back in-house, but really learning from what's happened through the pandemic with ASM, what worked and what didn't. So I really appreciate identifying those key, obviously minimize losses with the facility. That's pretty obvious to all of us, and I think it always has been. The sales staff, I think we've got to get our venues booked, and we know that. So adding the sales staff, I think, is critically important. Streamlining operations, better communication, I think, is critical. And obviously, when we're in-house, I think that's easier to do than when we have another, somebody else who's operating and we're trying to communicate. But being in-house, I think it gives us an opportunity to improve that communication. And bottom line, for our customers to be happy, for them to come back, for them to tell other possible customers that this is a great place, not only a great place to visit, but a great venues and great opportunities when they do come here, the enhanced customer experience, because we have control of it. So I just, kudos, I love the whole plan. It's very clear, but I really especially appreciate, what we're going to try to do differently and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
One more question. Courtney, with the grant, the federal grant, is that money, can we put that into some of this? Is that possible?
So for that grant money, it is to be used towards facility expenses. We don't have the ability to spend that yet, but the room tax revenues that we'd be spending for this endeavor essentially couldn't be made up.
Back into that.
Right, that we could move funds around.
So then so we should talk about if that's what we do. Can it go to something else? I know facilities, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, that money is to be used towards facilities. So essentially how that grant works is that the grant was awarded to us to reimburse us for facility operating costs during the pandemic. Once the grantor opens up their portal, we'll submit all our documentation like utility bills, ASM payroll registers, things like that. The money's then ours to use for as we see fit, once we've substantiated the expenses we had during the pandemic.
Okay, and that's a total amount of how much?
2.84 million.
Okay, so then obviously this would drop considerably, and we've got money.
Mayor, if I can.
But mail. Okay.
Mayor, if I can add in, one of the things that I asked Trent to do on our facilities is we need to rank all the different facilities that we need to allocate dollars for to be able to make sure that we are meeting the standard for bringing in events and things like that. And so he broke down 3 of the facilities. We don't have bowling because it's city-owned, but for those other 3 facilities, we have a priority list of improvements that we need to make. And when we talk about money, absolutely. I mean, we're talking $7.3 million of things that we want to allocate towards building if we have more money to do so. And so this is on our wish list. Our goal was to take that federal money that we get, start allocating it and ranking that and bringing this to the board for approval. But there's a much longer list than beyond what that money has for us that we would love to be able to apply for the buildings and improvements. So that's something that we'll come back to you at a later time once we have that.
Yeah, I wanted to remind the board that can go towards facilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're ranking that, and we'll come back to you to say, hey, there's a lot of needs that we have, and then you can give us great input to figure out how we best spend that.
Okay.
All right, any further Mr. Frothen?
Yeah, just to follow up on that, Courtney, on that grant, does that prohibit, even though the city owns those facilities, they're tourism facilities, is there something in the grant that would exclude those facilities from being funded?
It does not exclude any of
Okay.
the city-owned facilities. All 4 were on the grant application.
Okay, so I guess back to Charles, if those 4 facilities were on the grant application, why would we exclude any of them?
I didn't mention that we would exclude any of them. I just think that from what we normally have funded in the past,
Right.
this is a list of things that we've identified where there's improvements. So I'm not saying that we should exclude anything.
You just said that you just said that city owns, so it.
Yeah, so my understanding, and please, there's smarter people in here that can correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't funded bowling improvements outside that $2 tax that has gone into improvements in the past. And so if we
But
do.
if that was part of our grant application, those 4 facilities, was it part of our grant application, those 4 facilities?
I'm gonna defer to Courtney on that.
Absolutely. So we had to include all facility losses in the application, which included all 4 facilities.
Okay, so I just don't think we should exclude any facilities if it was on the grant to fund those 4 facilities. And then just another question on the positions. Charles, on this page, just really quickly on page 12, where is the, was there a bowling person? I'm sorry, it's small.
No, there is.
My glasses
There is,
today, so-
and thank you for bringing that up. That is at the board's recommendation, is that we have dedicated a director of bowling sales, that Mike is working hard on that job description as we speak. And so that's part of, like I said, we're elevating what we're doing in the sales for all those buildings. Bowling is certainly part of that, to go out and either acquire local events that we do or bring in outside events that help support that facility.
So under orange, this orange tab, NBS, RAC, is that where that position's located? I'm sorry, I just didn't see that. Is that,
The operations manager.
okay, NBS?
Yeah, it's included.
Okay,
It's included.
perfect, thank you.
Yeah. And Courtney, I saw the application, it was so good. Great job.
Just
Yeah, please
Mr.
go ahead.
Esquaga.
Charles, just real quick, you talked about security being the one item that we don't assume the contract out, we go to RFP. Are we assuming all the other contracts, or are we gonna take the opportunity to still, are there other areas that you wanna change up?
It's a great question. So initially, we're going to assume those contracts. We're evaluating right now what we want to do, but right now, we want to have a smooth transition to have that. It makes sense with all of our partners to continue that. Ben advised us about what the requirements are for that security RFP that we would need to do, but everything else, in the meantime, will provide an easy transition over.
I'm sorry, there's a lot to go through here, and I'm trying to take this all in on short notice. Is there any further questions by any of the board members? Seeing none. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman. When will you bring that back to the board on facilities and what you're kind of thinking on spending and all of that?
I believe we have a special meeting in the first week of April.
Are we going to do it then?
Yeah, to make a decision on the vendors. And so we were going to make some augmentations to the budget at that time as well.
Okay.
That was one of the discussions. And we were going to also have a discussion about BVK and our marketing contracts.
Okay.
So all of that will probably be in that first special meeting in April.
Do you know what date that is?
We haven't set that date, and so the clerk was going to email everybody to find available opportunities in April that would fit everybody's calendar, but we are going, and we were waiting to get the contracts back from the vendors today or this week, and to have that process so we could go and set that time. So we weren't really sure when we were going to have all that available, that information available.
And just to follow up on the chairs, if any of the board would like to go through the submittals from the food vendors, we will make that available. Bring your reading glasses, because it's literally about 600 pages between those three documents to go through, which is very detailed from all those vendors. So we're happy to make that available for anybody that would like to take a look at that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Usually I think we have those in our packets, don't we?
Yeah, we should have those in our package.
The packet wouldn't be big enough.
No, but you have the original.
Yeah,
submission.
literally, Mayor, they're like this per, we're happy to, I don't want to kill trees, but I mean, we're happy to do whatever the board would like.
Are they,
No, we don't need that, but usually we'll.
are they digital? Can we get those digital?
They're not. They're actually physical.
All right. Is there any way we can scan those into digital?
Okay.
We can try.
Just to clarify though, if we're reviewing the packets, first off, how many did you meet with, Charles?
There were three vendors that submitted. We went through a process internally, and we had a ranking system that the consultant provided to us that covered a lot of different topics, and we went through each of those topics as it related to each of the providers. And we met and we came up with a number, and per the board's direction is to make a recommendation to have a final two, and then a recommendation from me about how best to move forward. And the goal is that we are reaching out to the consultant, to have the consultant present at the next meeting to help guide us through that process, who's independent and who has done this before.
I'd be comfortable with that. It's versus us all going over. And again, if somebody wants to see the packet, great, but.
There's great reading, but we've done, like I said, we've had 7 people on our team, lose their eyesight trying to go through and understand and really dive deep into that. But we're happy to do what the board would like.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee.
I'm very comfortable with that. I thought that's what we had given direction for your committee to internally review, since this is an operational, not a policy matter. And so you reviewing it and coming with 2, and then if we have the available, that those RFPs are the 2 you're recommending, then, I would welcome the opportunity if I want to get my glasses out and sit down and read it and look at that more in depth before we make a decision. I think that gives us an opportunity to do that at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other further questions? Madam Mayor, I see your light on. No?
No, sorry.
That's right.
False alarm.
Okay. Ms. Safraza.
Yeah, Charles, I have no desire on the 600 pages, but if we could get an analysis from staff like this is what I appreciate, just having the rankings from staff of why you think one's better than the other, or if you like them both. I'm just going to put it in staff's expertise to come back to us, and that is important, that those are vetted. And I know we had someone help us with the RFP too, to go out with that, who has expertise, but I'm looking to staff to rank those and give us some direction. I just want to make sure we have the information when it comes back to us would be appreciated.
Absolutely, Jessica, and we talked about that this morning. Mike and I are going to work on providing a staff report.
Okay.
To Ben Kennedy's comment to it, the recommendation has to come from the CEO, but we're taking consideration with all the staff input that went into that decision. And so we will come back to you with recommendations.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Charles, I do have a question too. So you said Mr. Bigelow will be available to come back during that special board meeting, correct? For the vendor presentation?
He's available on some of the days if we want to do it the first week. Mike's giving me the finger one. He's available one day to come back for that. So if not, we would have to push it to the following week, but we know time's of the essence, so
Okay.
we want to try and make
Yeah,
that work.
Mr. Chair, so Mr. Bigelow has indicated that he's available in person on one day, Tuesday, I believe that's April 5th. He can do it via Zoom. Obviously, the preference is to have him in person.
Yeah.
And be here physically. So we're shooting, we would love the board to consider Tuesday, April 5th for that day.
Okay.
Correct.
I think we initially did look at Tuesday, April 5th. And I think everybody had that set aside. I will not be here. I will be in Boston.
I'm out too. I'm out.
Yeah.
Other than that, we're great. Mayor, you're going to be here. We're counting on you, Mayor, for that day. I think we have to look at a different day because I think it would be advantageous to have Mr. Bigelow here.
Yeah, that following week. Well, I think the problem is we've got to touch base with Mr. Bigelow and see what his availability is April 10th through the 16th.
Yep.
But if he can do by Zoom, do we need, I mean, just for the board, I'm okay if he can.
I mean, as long as he can do a presentation via Zoom, yeah.
Did we vote on it then? That's what I.
Yes, we will vote on that vendor on that day.
Okay, so we'll come back to you with some alternatives where we do a Zoom that fits everyone's schedule. So we'll follow up with you.
Okay, yeah, so let's just shoot for a day that works in that April 10th through the 16th, okay?
Great.
All right. Any other questions on the operations? There are a number of issues here. Obviously, the most important issue is obviously identifying our food vendor and moving forward with the contractual obligations so that we can hit our timelines on that June 1st date for the transition. Anything from staff that hasn't been presented that Mr. Larragetta, Ms. Yeager, I mean, you guys have been intimately involved. Anything that you would add to this morning?
I think, Mr. Chair, the only comment I would make is, to Councilman Bybee's point, is that thank you for recognizing that we are looking at sales from a standpoint of adding a sales team. I just want to make sure that from a clarity standpoint that there was a sales team in play and there was an events team in play. We are simply restructuring, reorganized, and refocused. So it's not that the team didn't exist. We're just restructuring. Thank you.
And Mr. Murdoch.
Thanks. Is there, I just got to ask the question, because we had such a different contract with SMG and ASM. I'm sure, Courtney, is there been an analysis, just done a quick snapshot, how much money we're really going to save by not having a middleman? Because it probably speaks volumes to how much money we'll have. If I may, just asking, because it's a big number that we saw when we had a middleman, so.
Absolutely. So in the first year, we are going to have some challenges with catching up on repairs and maintenance because ASM had gotten very behind on just regularly scheduled maintenance. So in the first year, we may not see as much cost savings as we'd like, but we're hoping that in future years, we're going to see a lot more cost savings. We're running the staffing much more efficiently. We're planning to bring certain contracts in-house as the years progress to save professional services fees. So as the years go on, we're anticipating to see more savings.
Is there any, is there any, if they didn't follow through with, I'm just asking this question, if they didn't follow through with their contractual obligations and keeping our facilities up, what penalties do we tack on them? I mean, what do we do for, I mean, is there any recourse here for us in settling our agreements with them? I mean, it's a lot of money. And they're sticking us with all of a sudden, oh, here you go. What was our contract? I mean, sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, so I can sort of try to address that. I don't have the contract, excuse me, here with me. But, you know, typically with that contract, we fund all of ASM's operations. So if ASM would have undertaken all that, the maintenance and the preventative things that we're talking about, we just would have lost more money. So I think they didn't do it to try to keep that number smaller. So it's, I think, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
And they overspent in certain areas like salaries and benefits compared to what we'd expected them to spend when the contract started. So even though we would have had more repairs and maintenance costs, we would have expected to see savings in other areas. So essentially, money was spent in ways that we may not have spent if we were running the facilities.
Mr. Fraza.
To follow up on that, actually, the repairs and maintenance, because obviously we have to have good facilities. Will your staff have time, because I do think that grant that we have, this is an excellent opportunity to catch up on we have to have working buildings and repairs, and us bringing it in-house, I actually think this is a good opportunity for staff to make sure we have good running facilities as we're taking them over. So is that something you can bring back to us? Does that give you enough time in April?
Probably the May 19th meeting would be
Okay.
more suitable to that. And I don't want to say anything in light of ASM. What I do want to do is I want to compliment Trent and Jose and the team there who've done a tremendous job. And we've updated this, one, in the CEO reports that we do monthly, and two, they've been under budget and getting a lot of stuff done in a very efficient way. And I just want to recognize both of those folks and their teams for doing a phenomenal job. And I think that's important. We will continue, and we will bring that back on the May 19th meeting to be able to review, rank, and talk about those facilities, because you're right. We want to be able to attract the best, and those facilities not only shine now, but we want to make them shine even that much better.
And so can we make sure on our operational folks, again, since that grant included all the facilities, I think we should have a walkthrough of all those facilities and a CIP list. And that's one thing I think where you have a really good opportunity as our CEO. And I'm new to the board again, but I know the local governments, they have a list of capital improvements that are needed. And of course, they're not funded in year one. I mean, we're unique. Okay, perfect.
So this is 3 of the 4, so we'll come back to you with the 4th.
Okay, perfect. If we can get that, that'd be great.
Well, and I think it's a good, I think Mrs. Frost makes a wonderful point, being that we're moving into budget season. I know I just had budget hearings all day yesterday. With budget season, one of the strategies that we need to move forward, coming with the ARP funds that came out of is that at the county, we're adjusting how we're going through our CIP and addressing some of that immediately, and then backing some of that ARP money back into the budget and augmenting it in different ways because our facilities and the assets in the county. I have almost 70 assets, brick and mortar assets that I have to work on. I have to move that backwards and work that, and we're found that that's more important, especially with my judicial system and different things of that nature that need to be addressed now. So to Mr. Frazo's point, utilizing general fund dollars and then backing that grant funding back into the budget, it would be advisable, because the longer we wait on the deferred maintenance and getting those contracts, especially with summertime being construction season, and we can't really utilize a lot, we can't do paving, we can't do resurfacing in the winter, we have to do that now. We should be pulling those RFPs, and now that Trent's on board to do that, we have a VP of facilities, we should really start focusing on making those moves today and spending that money, because if we wait on that to spend those dollars, we're not going to get those contracts filled, and that's going to be a longer duration of time before we can actually fulfill those obligations. And when we have people in the facilities, we can't always do that. So those are the things that we need to schedule now and get that going. Yes, Mr. Murdoch.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't, I know we all know this, you can't find anybody to do any work anyway. So you're pushing out. I hope there's not any timelines on this amount of money that we can have. I don't know if they disintegrate after if we don't use it or lose it, right deal.
There is a date.
Yeah, we have several years, and we're not delaying. Courtney's chasing this down. We don't have our hands on it yet, so we're working hard to do that, and Courtney will update us as soon as we know that we can touch that money.
Like I said, it's everybody just paying, giving a contractor in a facility and bid on things anymore, and then the timelines are so tough. It's just the way business is.
Ms. Jaeger, as it pertains to the operations plan, and this is important for me from a funding standpoint, we usually carry an ending fund balance and a rainy day fund. Can you give me current numbers on those two funds right now? right there.
Absolutely. So for the current fiscal year, our ending fund balance is budgeted to be 10.2 million.
Okay.
And our rainy day fund is currently at 1.3 million. The board's strategic policies allow us to fund the rainy day fund up to 2 million.
Up to 2 million. So
Correct.
we're short 700 in that fund, and we also have 12, almost 11 million is what you pointed out.
That's the projected ending fund balance based on the current budget.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, one of the things that we were doing is we were increasing our rainy day fund within this budget. I think we're increasing it by $200,000, if I'm not mistaken.
That includes the 200,000 increase from
Correct.
last year's ending balance of $1.1 million in the rainy day fund.
So we're getting towards that max that the board has allowed us to get to, and year over year, we're going to continue to increase that.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you. So, you know, if we don't use, just like the construction funds, or if we don't use the air service fund, I'm just asking, because it's knowledge for everybody here. If we don't spend it, it just falls back into the general fund, correct?
Correct. In the current year, the air service fund is budgeted out of operating expenses. So if we don't spend it, then that would be an additional increase to our ending fund balance. The ending fund balance as budgeted includes spending that amount.
Do we have any, is it in the packet on the financial side of what we potentially might spend or not spend?
So if I can step into this, I did meet with Mr. Griffin over at the airport, and I asked specifically about the anticipated uses in and around that. Now, the fund, which has been at $1 million for a couple of years, we haven't tapped that since 2018, is my recollection, in my speaking with Courtney, and that was in and around JetBlue, I think was the last time that was back in 2018. In talking with Mr. Griffin, he does not anticipate dollars between now and the end of the current fiscal for minimum revenue guarantees to those airlines.
We're actually getting, I mean, and you guys know this who are on the air service, we're doing very well. You know, the announcement of flights, but on that, I think we could, I mean, just a discussion for the board, that's gonna be money that I'm assuming Charles is gonna roll over to next year, so.
The plan that we have, it would roll over within our budget so that we continue to fund that at $1 million for when those opportunities do come up. That is the current plan.
Just
Ms.
on that,
Mr. Chapman,
from the RASC group, there is one potential out there, but it would be winter of 2022 to 2023. So there is some opportunity that would potentially have risk mitigation fees involved.
Correct, and we talked about that like November, December-ish, but that would be in next year's fiscal budget.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Just one thing to add to the air service fund, because there's a number of us that remember it was a heavy lift getting it on in general. You know, I think looking at it as the opportunities like Andy brought up, that's the traditional way. I think the other discussion, and again, not that we decided today, but it may be something outside of that lane. It may be something, we may want to look at Southern California and say we're going to do a air marketing period, and that we take the lead. But again, I'm just putting it out there. I know when we say we're rolling it over, we're maintaining that level. Correct. We're not. That doesn't mean we have an extra million to go on top of.
So I don't want to get too far out of the facilities operation. I know we all want to talk budget and dollars, and I think we're kind of diverting just a little bit there.
Got it.
But I think as the budget pertains to operations, I think there are opportunities through these different funding piles that we could move back to augment and move around, because I think what I'm hearing the board say is to have money just sit in money piles and not be utilized and have them move from year to year is not advantageous for what we really need to do. And if these things need to be expended to move this process along, but fiscally smart and having, the obvious reason we're bringing this back in is to try to be conservative and save money versus just spend this to a third-party vendor. That's really what the intent is. But we do have funds available, so I think that's the intent of the conversation. Madam
I know
Mayor.
we want to move on. I just want to ask because otherwise I'll forget. So 10 million this year. What was it in 19? Trying to compare.
So in fiscal year 19, our ending
Before.
fund balance was 11.9 million.
Okay.
So we spent that down by $1 million.
We did, and the 10.2 again budgeted for this year would assume that we spend air service money, and some of the other amounts that have been budgeted been not spent.
Understood.
And it also assumes that departments spend in accordance with their budgets and don't come in significantly under budget.
So we have money in the bank, Mr. Chairman?
Now I'm doing it. We're talking about budget again. Gosh darn it. Okay, I gotta stop it. I gotta stop it right now. We're gonna get way off challenge, and then I'm gonna go, this is a long, yeah. This week's not a good week for me, okay? Ms. Keel, you've been very quiet and very patient this morning. Do you have any comments or questions you'd like to make on this operations before we move forward?
I would love to, since I haven't been able to hear Bertie the whole time because there's some technical problems that IT is working on with the RSCVA.
Okay, but do you have any, can you hear me in regards to the facilities plan, or do you have any questions about that?
Yeah, I was able to hear Charles, and I can hear you now, but other than that, everyone else has been cutting in and out the whole time, so I really have not been able to get in information. So it looked like a really great heated conversation. I wish I could have heard from your guys' facial expressions. Yeah, it was pretty good. So no, unfortunately, I cannot make a comment.
Okay, all right, well, we will work on that. And I think for Mrs. Keel, you know, I know it's difficult, but if everybody could talk right into the microphone, it probably will help her. It sounds like she can hear us when we're talking right into the microphone, so make sure you're swallowing the mic as usual. Take home some foam with you. All right, so seeing no further discussion at the board level, are there any public comment in regards to the facilities operations plan? I have nobody signed in and nobody standing up to thrust himself to talk to the mic, so we will move on. I'm looking for a motion to accept the report and the update. I have a motion from Madam Mayor. I have a second from Mr. Murdoch. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously with all members voting. All right, special events funding. Mr. Harris, will somebody else take this meeting over? I'm going home.
All right, moving on to special event funding. Let me just kind of give an overview where we're at currently. The special event funding that we're looking at, the board has augmented a $500,000 additionally in the current budget that we have. We've allocated the money in the current budget off the base to events that are going to be executed within this current year. That additional $500,000 is what probably the board wants to hear from. I will say that the internal committee around special events has a meeting planned on April 20th. This meeting on April 20th will review applications for next fiscal year, and that is for events that will happen after July 1st and be consumed through June 30th of 2023. Of those, 34 applications have been submitted for next year's fiscal budget, 6 of which have never are new to the application process, or 17% of that group. Of the dollars that have been allocated by the augmentation, there's $500,000 in that. Now, there's probably a handful of special events between now and the end of this year. Those are bold within the staff summary that you have received. So it's limited based upon the timing and the good news that we've seen on the augmentation, what can be spent between today, the 23rd of March, and the end of June. Part of the recommendation that we're making, and actually had breakfast with the legacy events last week and met with them and tried to understand kind of where they're at and what their needs are and where we are moving forward. And one of them, you know, that in talking to them is really an economic impact study for the legacy events. And that has not been done on a uniform basis in a while. And I think to provide that input and use the funds wisely and responsibly is one of the things that we recommended in that staff report, is that we find a third-party partner, and with those legacy events, to use that money to help understand what sort of updated economic impact that has on our destination. Now, I just want to remind the board that when we go through this, we have a process, right? We have an internal group that meets and has met, and there are certain requirements that every special event must meet in order to have that funding. In the current budget, outside of the augmentation, we reserved $66,000 within that for opportunities. And that allowed any special events within the current fiscal year to submit an application for this group to review as an opportunistic fund. And so that $66,000 is still there. We purposely held that back. I think, Jessica, you had mentioned it in a previous meeting about what happens if someone wants to do that during the year, right? So we did take a little bit more than 10, maybe about 12, 13% for that, and that has not been used yet. But, you know, part of our values that the board certainly endorses, make sure that we're transparent and responsible and to do those things. And we want to make sure that, one, we're following the guidelines that the board has approved, and two, that we are responsible. And I think the best thing that we can do with some of that augmentation money is to develop and go through an economic impact report for the legacy events, and that's part of the recommendation. With that, I'll open it up back to the chair and any questions and comments.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And thank you for providing the report. I'll jump right into this. So, Ms. Safraza, I see you raise your hand first.
Yeah.
Remember, eat the foam. Eat
Charles,
the foam.
So I'm a little confused on this. What are we funding this year? What's the total amount?
In the current fiscal year, we are funding $433,000 out of the base budget for special events that has been met by the committee last March for the current fiscal year.
Okay, so these that are listed in the staff report, the emerging, established, legacy.
That's part of the current budget.
Okay, so the 500,000, we allocated that for this fiscal year.
Correct, and as I said, we had about 90 days to spend that in
Right.
the current, and our recommendation is, let's use that to get a better understanding of the economic impact for those legacy events.
Well, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not sure I want to spend that money on a study. I want that money to go to the special events, and I also, and I have talked to the chairman about this, and we had this at our retreat, is setting up a subcommittee of the board to review special events applications with staff. And so I thought we were gonna have this discussion today of how that's gonna lay out. I'm not sure I wanna just blow through $500,000 in 90 days. I don't know if that would be responsible. But at the same time, I think we need to update the policy. We talked about local events. I know Chairman Lucy had brought in that wrestling and the local sports events. That's awesome and huge. And so I wanna be able to, as part of this, and I want to make sure that money carries over to next year, the stuff that we haven't spent. But I think as part of this, we need to have categories as well for what we're going to allocate. And I just think this policy needs to be updated.
So, yeah, Mr. Frazo, so I've had conversations with Mr. Harris, and I've also had conversations with Mr. Kennedy about establishing the subcommittee. And so we can do that, and we've had those discussions. We haven't identified those members yet, but that would be an open meeting forum because of that. And so we're trying to structure that discussion. So it's my fault. I have been delayed a meeting with Mr. Kennedy to kind of pen that out and do that formation, but that is in the works. And so we will bring that back. I don't know how quickly I can get that probably framed, but hopefully by next month I'll have that finished and put together so that the board can meet and discuss not only the framework, because I want it in place before the next fiscal year and before we submit budget at the end of May, so that we have that understanding going into the next year for the fiscal spending, so that the budget team and operations have the understanding as well. Mr. Harris.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I can add, part of the reason of what we set up was, with the board's approval, is that there's a process to evaluate any special event that comes through, that they need to meet certain requirements in order to be funded. Part of what we went through as a team and through the guidance of Paul Ouimet was, we wanted to make sure that special events is at the core of what we're doing moving forward. There's no question that that is important, both for the team and for the board and for the community. There's no question about that. But we have certain requirements under the current statute. For example, we can't fund more than 25% of an event, or it has to be involving 2 hotels. There's a whole set of approved guidelines that we do, and that's why we would meet with that based upon new applications to be able to fund those. Now, if we want to change that, and that's one of the things I mentioned previously, we need to do an audit. So if we want to update the guidelines, if we want to require that every event has to happen within Washoe County, or if we want to go from 2 to 1 hotel, or we want to just do sponsorship instead of room nights as part of that, that takes time to do, and I think we need to do that. That is what I'm proposing as part of the next fiscal year and part of our 3-year strategic plan.
But Mr. Harris, I think what the board has asked of you is for you to do that audit and bring us back a true understanding of that special events funding, not put it out to a study and hire. I think that is the goal of what this board has asked you to do, is to provide us that structure from your expertise and your level, to provide us that kind of guidance at an operations level, because that is the direction that's been provided by the board in a policy manner, and that's what I think we're expecting from you. Because I don't want to spend money on it. I neither do want to spend money on an economic study to do that. I think that is the goal. I mean, that is the role of the CEO to do that. So that is what I undertook when we had that discussion, and so that's what I expect. I don't know if that's different from what the board anticipates, but that's what I expected of you to do for special events.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And basically, in 90 days to be responsible to be able to do that, we need time to be able to audit, and the priorities that we have, we've got 3 priorities. Conference of Mayors, 3-year strategic plan, and that facilities management. To bite off more than that before the end of June would be irresponsible to the staff, and to make sure that I'm not giving you the best recommendations that we can in order to be set up for success.
Well, I think, Charles, too, the 500,000, in true honesty, I guess, discussion for the board, maybe we should roll that over to next fiscal year. There's a couple little local events that I keep getting blown up on the phone, like TEDx, if we have in that 67,000 mark. But I think the 500,000, maybe that's something we roll over, so it gives time, we can set up the committee, do the audit, but we have maybe a little set aside for local events and
Mr. Fraza, and that was my intent, was to have the board, the subcommittee of the board structured by next month so that we could fill that board, but that board could work with Mr. Harris being the lead to audit the policies that are written in the bylaws, and try to expend some of that 500,000 on some of the pre-submitted applications for special event funding, but also at the same time find a new formation of that. Because what I don't like about the current special event funding is that it's limiting to really kind of a heads and beds model, which is really our structure. And I don't want to get away from that. I want that to be a focus, but it also should be, marketing should play a major role. How we pertain to local versus out of town events. Should we structure our own events? There's a lot of things missing within the policy that needs to be addressed by a subcommittee and then brought back to this board for further discussion. And I'd like to get that done before the end of the fiscal year, before budget, so that if there is any rollover dollars, those rollover dollars move into the next fiscal year, and they're structured properly, so immediately we can start expending those dollars, not waiting to do that with a new strategy, because I really want to make sure that the policy matches what we do. To Mr. Harris's point, that it's not just kind of discretionary, so to speak. And right now, as we're moving forward through some of these requests, it really is a discretionary discussion versus really what is the structure of it. And that's really what I'm trying to get to.
Mr. Chair, I think, if I may.
Hold on, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you. Just a couple quick questions and a comment. When is the deadline for fiscal year 22-23 baseline funding special event requests?
That surpassed in January. I want to say it was January 14th for next year. So that application process has closed. And as I mentioned at the onset of this discussion, on April 20th, we will begin reviewing those 34 applications under the current structure. And once I have direction from the chair in terms of, board participation, audit, then we can augment and change and update that per the policy.
And that's for the standard baseline 500,000 budget. And then a question on the augmented 500,000, is that being contemplated as an annual increase or a one-time annual? Okay, perfect. And I do support a conversation about looking at the criteria around special events. And I would say a special event in the Reno Sparks area is much different than a special event in the Washoe County portion of Lake Tahoe. And how we do events are drastically different. Obviously, just the number of spaces we have, the amount of open space, the facilities, all that is very different. So I do think we need to look at things that are somewhat different than standard operating procedure, or at least historical operation procedure, on heads and beds, times of years, different things like that. And what is the definition of a special event? And I'd like to have that conversation at the appropriate time because those are changing based on different jurisdictions. And this board and this organization has a responsibility up the hill, so to speak, on how we need to manage and modify some of our efforts as they relate to what's going on in Tahoe.
And Mr. Chapman, I absolutely agree with you, and that's one of the challenges that we have at the current policy, that it is very limiting to just kind of the Reno Sparks basin, and didn't really encompass now Burning Man. It didn't encompass the lake. It didn't encompass some of the things that are going on outside of here that are, the motor speedway events that are in the East Truckee Canyon. There are different things that need to, and it's not always about heads and beds, because Hyatt only has a limited number of actual bed, hotel rooms that can accommodate, but yet the traffic on 4th of July and the sea tax that is incurred in this valley because of the lake and different things have to have some different kind of values set to them. So I absolutely understand, and that will be put into the policy moving forward, I promise.
Yeah, and I was supporting, you do see it in, there are 3 events that have been funded, and we're also having conversations within our own jurisdiction about how you fund legacy events and, where dollars really help an event. If a bottom line special event is in the millions of dollars and, they're asking for X amount, where can that best be put? So just for future.
Mr. Harris.
This is a great discussion, and I, there's a lot of things that we need to do in that subcommittee that you're talking about will be really important, because we're really talking about 3 different areas, right? We've got our current events that we fund. Now, do we fund more of that in the current events, or do we change that structure of the percentage that we certainly allocate? That's one. To Jessica's point, do we do more for local events that don't fall into heads and beds? That is certainly part of that. To Rick's point that he's been talking about earlier, how do we get new events that are here and part of that? So those are 3 different areas that we have to focus on. If you look in your board packet, and I believe it's in the back of it, there's a list of 70 different events that are currently already done. So when we think about bringing new events, how does that fit into the schedule? Strategically, how do we look at that, and how does that augment for either needs periods or development of these special events that are going to make us successful? And that's all part of that discussion that needs to take place.
Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you.
I'll come to you next, Mr. Mayor.
Chairman, I agree with you. I would imagine we probably have 10 studies on a shelf somewhere, if you know anything about government. And we do them at nauseam. One of the things that I would say, I think Ms. Ferraz brought up a really good point, is that I know TEDx has reached out to me, and then also, sponsoring like the music festival that they came and spoke about would be amazing. And also like with the youth sports, things like that. One of the things maybe we should look at is doing contingency funds for each board member. A lot of times that can be really helpful, because people will reach out to all of us directly and say, hey, I'd like, especially the smaller ones, and also some of the local ones too, that we could really grow. So just on other boards that I sit on, sometimes that's sort of a good way to do those smaller asks, and then everyone doesn't have to come back to Charles and be like, hey, Charles, what about $500 for, TEDx or whatever that looks like, but maybe something to consider.
And that's another discussion, Madam Mayor, that I did want to bring back, and I was going to bring it back later this afternoon, this morning, which is kind of an update to our board policies. I sit on RTC, and at the County Commission, we do have contingency funds available at both of those boards for small projects for whatever, as long as they're set by community, and I know you do at the City of Reno as well. And it can be $5,000, $10,000 for each member to utilize. And if it's not utilized, it still just rolls back over to the following year and just goes back into the general fund. But it is a way for us to very quickly move along some of these smaller asks for our region, because all of us brought to this board, all the board members have that ability. So I think from a special events standing, it makes sense. I want to make sure, though, from a legality standpoint, because we're a quasi-judicial, quasi-private public board, that we can do that from a standpoint, because the boards you and I sit on that have that contingency, they're all public officials versus quasi. So I want to make sure from a legality standpoint, but we'll look into that. Mr. Chair, Mr. Harris.
And Mr. Chair, if we go that direction, then we would just have to change the policy as how it's constructed for the current, because we want to support all the special events, but that's why we have the rules set up for people to qualify to get that. Now, if we want to change, then that'll be at the pleasure of the chair.
I just think, yeah, we need more flexibility. The other thing that can do is go towards travel and training. So you're also kind of putting a cap on,
Right.
you know, if people are traveling a lot and trying to, you know, make that expenditure to the RSCVA.
Right,
So
I agree with you.
things like that.
Mr. Murdock, you've been very patient.
Thank you. You know, this is we've had, what, 5 months of record taxes, am I correct? This is the time where Reno can really strike with a great special event policy. And what I mean is, you got the university thriving up there. We should be doing, we should be doing NCAA tournament. We should be looking for the, you know, working on the Aces ballpark, working with the new festival at San Rafael to do something in Sparks. I mean, I don't care where it is, but we have opportunity to really, really move faster than a lot of destinations. And I really hope we can move fast and get what we need so we can bring some business. What's going to be the new Hot August Nights? Because, you know, there's an age timeline on some of these events that we've got to replace, and they do fill some need periods. So I'm hoping that, again, we're on the right track, sounds like, Mr. Chair, and Charles loosening up some of our guidelines, but also we got to pull in the university. We got to pull in everybody in the region. The ACEs. Let's look at this on a real, I don't know, widespread level. Also, somebody mentioned to me the other day, bring your meetings back to Reno with some incentive. I mean, Mike, you've got an incentive fund, if I'm not correct. Is that in special events or is that in your sales funds? Ask all the business people, not meeting planners. Ask the business people and in the chamber, all their people, bring your meeting here. Well, you know, some kind of incentive. Anyway, I just really want to, we've got opportunity here. Let's grab it fast, because it'll go away when these cities wake up and start competitive, you won't get much. We're going to be doing the same thing we're doing.
Mr. Harris.
Rick, thank you. So I just want to be able to talk about, you know, we have had record-setting revenues. There's no question about it. The destination has done great, but I just want to make sure that we level set where the availability is versus the wish list. If we look at the major events that we're talking about for this fiscal year, Conference of Mayors, the additional special events that we funded, the transition plan, the ASM adjustment, and the youth sports plan, that totals more than $3 million, which means the increased revenues that we've had combined from all that, we're balanced at that point for the first 7 months through February. There's not extra dollars that we do that. So if we're going to do in and above anything else at this point, it's going to have to come at a cost that we're either going to tap into existing dollars, whether it's the airline fund or whether it's the $500,000, to be able to make those events work. Because it's incremental dollars over what we were doing in 2019, and we're doing well. But the county also benefits. We're only seeing 6.625, Courtney, is that right? 6.625? Before Incline Village and before...
Right, so depending on the district, but in total, our tax rate's 8.625, and we have distributions to Incline Village, portions that are committed to our debt.
2% to the debt and everything else. So of that money, we're really balanced. So we don't have a lot of extra money that we can do. If we want to go above and beyond, which I always want to do, we're going to have to tap into other resources to be able to fund that.
It's carryover too. I think it's two different things, sorry.
Hold on, Councilwoman Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in looking at the special event funding, my understanding and reading through and the recommendation, once we approve the strategic plan, because that is showing that we are identifying special events as a pillar, key pillar that we all support, which I think there's not anyone who does not. But once we do that, I think the audit is important because it gives us the ability to look at the events, the 500,000 of the events that have submitted, that we're getting ready to get a recommendation in May on, but then that other bucket of money, that 500,000 that we've requested and approved already, that incentive fund program to attracting new events that we can do throughout the year, the audit will help us also in evaluating what is the most effective use of that, and the opportunities that Mr. Murdock talks about is in that other bucket of money. So we've got the two, the one we've already funded, and I think definitely relooking at what our policy is on how we allocate that is critically important. I think that needs to be updated, and I support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bybee. Madam Mary, I saw your hand up next. Okay. Ms. Silver, any further discussion from the board? Okay. Shannon, do you have anything really quick on special events?
No, I'm still not able to hear very well, but I kind of.
I apologize. All right. Ms. Fraza.
Question on the, are these in the packet here, what's recommended and then the board approves it, or are they already funded?
So what you see in that packet has already been approved by the board in the current fiscal year. We will come back on the May 19th meeting and make recommendations for the next fiscal year as part of that overall budget process. So you'll see that here in 2 months for the next fiscal year as part of that budget.
So I just want to make sure, so these events that are in here are for 22, 23?
21, 22.
21, 22. Okay, because some of them, and it goes back to Board Member Chapman, what he said too. I'm just looking at some of these, and I'm not sure I personally, as a board member, that I would fund them again in the future. They're not even in Washoe County. And I'm not saying that that's not, I mean, that comes down to the policy of the board, but there's a couple on here in particular that I don't know how we benefit as a region. It's not a local particular thing, and I'm not sure we benefit by having an event in Truckee or,
Right.
It's not on the, I don't even think one of them's on the Nevada. So, I do think this policy needs to be updated.
And that's part of that recommendation, Jessica, is we need to audit and update what we're doing. Yeah. It's a great point. Under the current policies, they are eligible to be funded, and that's why that group is in that list. When we update and do that audit, then we can augment and, at the board's direction, update that and change that and realign our priorities.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Fraza. And Mr. Harris, one thing I did want to ask is that it says marketing opportunity funds remaining for fiscal year 21-22 is $65,500. Is that still available outside of the 500, or where is that?
Yes, sir. That is included in the current funding of $500,000 that is still available. So if there were local events that and that was an opportunity fund that we set up at the beginning of the year specifically. Mm-hmm. So if there were local events that wanted to be funded, they could go through and create an application process that would go through marketing. And if it fits the criteria of what marketing does, then they'll be funded.
Okay. And so what I would ask, while we're on the discussion of special events, and it has come up by the mayor and Ms. Fraza a number of times and to myself, TEDx is a large event that does bring a lot of people to the region that not only benefits the community, it highlights Reno Tahoe. I would ask, this board today to make a recommendation to staff to support that event to the tune of $20,000, if available, on a moving forward basis for their event. They have an event May 21st, I believe, is their date, and it's upcoming quick. They lost a significant amount of funding from the university, and so we've done in-kind for them before, but they definitely need more funding to continue that event, which does bring brings a different type of value to our community, for the business community, and also for just our region as a whole, to elevate that. So I'd like to continue to do that. So just want to put that on the floor for discussion.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Madam Silver.
If I may make a comment.
Yes.
Ann Silver, for the record, representing the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. In the spirit of full transparency, I serve on the TEDx Reno committee and helped to prepare and finalize its 501c3 status obtained less than 2 months ago. The Executive Committee, the Speaker Selection Committee, and Speaker Preparations Committee of TEDx Reno are comprised of terrific business people in this committee, led by Brett Simmons, a professor at UNR, who determined that TEDx Reno would be best served by removing itself from the sponsorship of UNR. That has created the need for sponsorships from the community in order to remit payment to RSCVA for use of the Reno Event Center and the garage. But as CEO of the Chamber, which now has over 234 nonprofit Chamber members, I can't, in good conscience, recommend that this particular nonprofit be awarded funding from the RSCVA when there are 800 nonprofits in Sparks, Reno, and Washoe County, each of which would like to have the RSCVA waive its fees for its facilities. To set this precedence for TEDx Reno by virtue of political or personal preference would open the floodgates for all nonprofits in the community to request waivers for what are considered to be special events. Galas, speakers' events, and other fundraising activities for hundreds of nonprofits would look to the RSCVA for free rentals. I don't think special events fall under this purview, since we should be all about tourism, room bookings, and conventions. TEDx Reno does not normally bring in room nights, and in this case, the ones it has, the Row has kindly comped a few rooms for out-of-town presenters. The Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce continues to use the convention center for its annual events and will do so again for its BizBall event in July. We factor in the charges for facility use and always have. We understand that RSCVA deserves to be compensated for use of its facilities, regardless of the reason, the elected officials who sit on this board, and regardless of which nonprofit events each one of us may individually deem worthwhile. I do not believe we should create a precedent for one nonprofit that doesn't meet the criteria that currently exists as established by the RSCVA board, despite my own involvement and support for TEDx Reno. Consistency and fairness should be our model, and not special interests and special privileges. Thank you, Chair Lucy, for allowing me to read this statement.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. I do appreciate that. Mr. Fraza.
Didn't we do a business pass with the chamber? Did the RSCVA help sponsor that? Didn't we do? Van Wango?
No.
Bandwango is a third-party provider that we contracted with to provide resources for segments through our website to help promote tourism. So whether it's a brewery pass, a food pass, and things like that, we do have that on the books, and that is contracted on a yearly basis.
And we're no longer involved in it.
Okay, but were we involved, was the chamber involved in that? Listen, I'm all about the fairness. I just think it should be fair across the board, so.
Yeah, so the chamber was a co-sponsor when they came into that, and what happened is that when we went out to people in the community, we were not getting access to all the folks in the community because they had to be members of the chamber. And I went to Ann and I said, I'd like to move beyond that because we can't just have chamber members. We need to open up to the entire. They backed off. We now open it up to everybody here to be able, that are eligible for Bandwango passes moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Chapman.
Just going back to the discussion on the special events, I think I heard a comment or a recommendation that we roll that existing augmented $500,000 or potentially roll that into next year, which I would support. And that would also, I just want to clarify that would then create plus or minus another $1 million of special event funding opportunity for next year, for this subcommittee to come together, discuss the criteria, what special events are, how we fund them, how we look at them, and then make that recommendation back to this board on how that up to $1 million of additional augmented money could be spent.
That's correct.
Correct? Thank you.
That's correct. And to Ms. Silver's comment, I understand her position in regards to the utilization of the facilities and the chamber's stance in regards to TEDx and the nonprofits within the community. And that's one of the discussions why we want to bring the policy back, because I think the policy is limiting in its current fashion. So I'm urging TEDx to go through the process and submit an application for that funding and have that be brought back to this board for a recommendation for an expenditure. I think Ms. Safraza has obviously made some points in regards to events that are outside of this community that get funded. I personally see some of those events are beneficial because they bring traffic. They fly through our airport and they utilize our hotels. You know, there's not a lot of hotels in Truckee. So there are different ways I think every board member has a specific, and that's really why I want to sit down, put together a policy board and have them really look at special events, because we haven't spent enough time on it, and we have a significant amount of money that this board has put towards that type of funding. It really needs to have a deep dive into policy, not just this carte blanche. If you fit the criteria, you get the money. If you don't, you don't get the money. It shouldn't be that. There has to be a little bit more evolution. And festivals and that type of thing today are really what drive the economy, not just organic tourism or, to that matter, conferences. Conferences have gone The mayor and I can tell you that a half or 3/4 of our conferences have now gone virtual. And I haven't traveled in 2.5 years because of it, because I've gone to my conferences virtual. And I think we're going to continue to see that hybrid, conferences will come back, but what we're still seeing is that a willingness to go and participate in a quality of life festival, something of their interest, whether that be youth sports, whether that be TEDx and business driven, whether that be community, music, sports, you name it. I think that's really why we need to evolve the special events funding and have that discussion, not only to allow for this board to make be a bit more dynamic in those decisions, but also allow for board members to make decisions such as that. Because to the mayor's point, with USA Wrestling, we brought in SWA Wrestling and had the local state event at the facility at the convention center. It was well attended. We had 400 people from the local area to do that. But then again, the next weekend we were in Sparks at Spanish Springs High School for a state championships, very small. You had people from Las Vegas traveling up here. Western States Championship is going to be in Farmington, Utah in June, and it's been sponsored by Visit Idaho, by not just the state, but our NCOT, so Visit Idaho. And then they have the Las Vegas Open that's going to bring wrestlers from across. And we have support segment that Ms. Shelley Fine and Mr. Larraguetta are currently working with, volleyball, bowling, that name it, these youth sports. But if we bring the smaller, younger associations in now and get them involved, there's a more attractive reason for them to come to the reason. If the association has a commitment from the local jurisdiction, which we heard Mr. Omet say, is that community involvement, that connection, that nexus, and because we have that nexus, people have the willingness to participate. So that's what needs to be recreated in the policy that isn't in existence today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
First.
When you look at the meetings business, and I would direct it, Mr. Larraguetta and his team, the meeting business isn't coming back as fast as you would think it is. And this is just a way to, if we're going to slide into a possible recession, this is, people still need these other type of events. This is opportunity to at least use our facilities, because they'll sit empty if we don't, right? I mean, I think we've got to find a way to use our buildings, and this is a way.
Yeah, so Mr. Murdoch, Mike Larraguetta for the record, I think to Chairman Lucy's point is that I think the meeting industry will recover. I think where it will struggle is on the attendance side. I think that if it's their personal business and they need to meet in person, they're going to make those choices to do so or not. If they work for an organization, a trade show, an association, and they don't have to travel, there generally is going to be travel restrictions in play. We've seen that currently, and all the way through, we're anticipating that through the next fiscal year as well, that organizations have made decisions, especially at the larger corporate levels, to not put their employees on the road. They're just not doing it. And travel budgets are suffering from that. But to Chairman Lucy's point, and to your point, Mr. Murdoch, I think people's personal choices to travel, whether that is on vacations, to attend festivals, sporting events, their kids' events, or whatever it may be, is still happening. And we're seeing that in our numbers. If we look at our upcoming events that are legacy events, whether it's NCVA in volleyball or Jam On It in basketball, their forecasted numbers, or the bowlers in 2023, their forecasted numbers are to be on par or exceed 2019 levels.
Mr. Larraguetta.
Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I like that too.
Madam Mayor. I tell you what, if I get to like 20 screw-ups today, I guarantee you I'm just going to leave.
I might wield a bigger
I'm almost
stick
there
if I
too.
were
I'm like at
Mr.
18.
Mayor.
I'm at 18. Mrs.
All the
Lucy,
girls can understand that.
go ahead.
Mr. Larraguetta, you guys, don't you have a sales incentive for booking, right? And I mean, the last time I looked at it, it looked like you guys are right on target. You're doing pretty well.
Yeah, so Madam Mayor, yes, we have a room night goal that is approved by the board on an annual basis. Right now, we're about 72% to goal, with approximately through obviously June 30, another quarter to go. So we're anticipating that we will meet and exceed that number. Yeah. I know earlier you were talking, I think there was a question as it related to the booking incentive.
Yeah. So
the booking incentive was something that was put into play, and Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in 2019. The board approved a $500,000 allocation that allowed us and the team to go out and solicit business. It is common in the industry. Most cities, major cities, tier 2 cities, all have that available to them. It's become a buyer's business per se. Groups are looking for financial support to come to a destination. That being said, when we went through the budget, we obviously eliminated that fund during the pandemic. It was brought back to a $400,000 level during the augmentation. That currently is what it is at, the $400,000 level. We have not allocated any funds out of that $400,000 because generally what happens is when we make a financial commitment to a group, the majority of those groups are not receiving those funds until the room nights actually consume, until the group actually meets. And we track all our concessions through our CRM of who we have made financial commitments to for future years. Now, there are on occasion a few groups that are requiring seed money in advance, where we will honor that request. Obviously, we limit our liability from the standpoint of a contract with them stating that if your group was to cancel or if your group doesn't meet the number of room nights that you have contracted with one of our hotel partners, then the amount of sponsorship that we have allocated to you will decrease.
Yeah, okay. So do you anticipate all that 400,000 then being spent?
We do not.
So what happens to that money? It seems like there's a lot of little like air service here
Yeah,
and then sales incentive here. We need like a really big dive down because like we have a lot of opportunity here. And one of the things is cities, because I'm, on a lot of those conference calls, they're so aggressive right now with their special events because people are getting funding from, on the federal side, there's so many different things, but we really need to be looking at that and start saying, okay, what do we want to be when we grow up? Like, honestly, this does give me a little bit of anxiety whenever I hear this. And then I would just want to say, on those local events, they're really important because in the community I hear a lot, what does the RSCVA do? I hear that a lot. And that is not good. And that's got to go back to being local and taking care of the people that want to invest and bring music festivals and TEDx and, and I don't know which ones you're referring to, but I don't know if there's 800 nonprofits looking for a special event. I don't know. And I think you're right. Like, it's always hard to pick and choose. But we have got to also be really good locally. People, like I said, they say it all the time. What does the RSCVA do? They think that we just go to conventions all over the country and then just try to get the conventions here. But I think to Rick's point, you made a really, really good point, and I would just ask this, and this could be on the end of the agenda, but we were talking to past mayors. Rick and I ran into some past mayors, and one of them actually, Mayor Sferaza, mentioned that there was a great campaign called Bring Your Convention Home. And I think that's a great local campaign to also connect with our community. And really, I do think we have to pay attention to what's happening right here at home. So I just want to stress that because I don't like how the community perceives us.
Ms. Silver.
Yes, I just want to make clear for the record that I am in total support of RSCVA's support for special events. My point is just I would like it to be consistent. I would like there to be some policies and some boundaries because there are today 800 nonprofit organizations in this community, much like TEDx Reno, which was through my efforts organized as a nonprofit effectively about 6 weeks ago, that wish to have their facility charges waived. And I myself run several special events at the convention center, and we pay. And so I think as long as things are fair and we understand, as the mayor said, that there's great benefit to be made by encouraging special events, in fact, promoting them and having our reputation one of promoting local events, I think that's great. I just think we have to look at the spirit of consistency and fairness, which we can do through some policies and revision of policies.
Understood.
Thank you.
Agreed. Councilwoman Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the mayor's point, it's exactly what last summer when I was at Destinations International, it was the number one thing that that consistent message was connecting local, was making to have your local people understand, your residents understand who you are, what you do, and really most importantly, the messaging that it's tourists coming into your community, but because they do, and the room nights and the economic impact keeps our taxes lower, adds to all of the things that we're able to do in a community is because of tourism, because of those dollars coming in, and we don't message that well enough, and really connecting as strongly as we can to an awareness campaign, to reaching out to the community. We went to the event on the river last year to really kind of introduce some of our team to a lot of locals that were there that didn't really know. They've heard RSCVA maybe, but they didn't know who we were. So critically important that we continue and improve our outreach to the community so that they know who we are and what we do. And I couldn't agree more, because that's what I came away from DI with, was that one strong message, consistent. On the TEDx event, Mr. Chair, as far as them applying, the deadline is already here for the groups that have applied and are being considered for the 2022-23 budget. We do have the other $500,000, which I think we need to do the audit and decide, is it nonprofits, who it is, and what our criteria are, and then maybe it is something that we can look at that time. But I think obviously they've missed the deadline for the initial $500,000 that we are already considering. But looking at the additional money, and depending on what criteria that subcommittee and this board decides on, I think we need to wait to move forward until that work is done. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Bybee.
Just to point out, with good comments, Charlene, but I just, with the contingency fund, this is another reason why they work well, because then you get the purview, Andy, to fund, $1,000 of maybe a special event up in your region. We're not pitting each other against each other, because, you might come with an ask and everyone goes, no, I don't want that, but a board member wants that, right? But these are much smaller asks, but they can be very beneficial locally, and then that way, if Charlene wanted to fund TEDx for $500 or $1,000, whatever that looks like, then it doesn't become where we're competing with each other either. So that can be another benefit to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Esquaga.
I like special events. Just want to go on the record. No, I don't want to spend a lot of time on the virtues of, it's been a huge pillar of this community in tourism. I do want to circle back. Just again, back to TEDx, and I echo a lot of what Ann brings up. The thing I'm at is we do have a process. They did miss the deadline. We have a discretionary, and I want to say, is that the 66,000? I think if they want to go through the process, and again, I would rather defer to staff. They have the machine built. If we weigh in that they should receive something, I'm good with that. But I think they need to go through the process. And you have that set up exact. I mean, I remember you mentioning we're going to carve this contingency out for these last minute requests. Personally, and I know we don't have to decide it today, I'm not as comfortable with the discretionary fund for a number of reasons. And I think I like the fact that we have a process in place. And we as individual board members aren't all being lobbied, or we have our special interests that we want to. If TEDx is coming to us individually, honestly, I'd rather funnel them to staff for the request. And I'm using them as the example. This has been an ongoing challenge that predates all of us on fair funding for all the events. And I think it's a good problem to have. I mean, we've got legacy events that we can match with anywhere in the country to draw people in. The tough part is all events aren't created equal either. And, even looking at this list, and I won't weigh in individually of what I think merits it or what doesn't, it probably is different than everybody around here. But it's hard because on one end, we want to do the right thing and be a good community player, I think, but there's another caliber event that we know, or whether it's an event producer that's going to do a festival, or that we almost have to go out and aggressively pursue, that really is going to move the needle. And, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much either, but, Rick brings up the university. What a great potential partner. And I know we have a sporting group with Shelley, but for example, Boise State's coming to town, football this fall. That's a citywide convention. You say actually it's better than a citywide convention because they're not sitting in a conference for 8 hours. They're here to come have a good time, but they're gonna go 2-3 nights. They might go a night up at the lake. You know, we had a run there where Oregon was in town for about a 2 or 3 year run. My only point being is, I think we really do, this discussion of events is great. I just think, you know, I don't think we're all broken. I think we're doing a great job. I think it's fine tuning, tightening it up. And then just last point, going back to FedEx, I would just put them in the pipe process and let them go.
And I think this has been a really good conversation this morning. I really do. I mean, honestly, we didn't get the time to put this in at the board retreat just because we had so many other things we needed to address. It's important that we have this conversation, though, because the evolution of special events, and it's important that we have it. So I think everybody's point is very valid this morning in regards to where they'd like to see special events going. But the evolution is there, and it needs to be addressed within our community. And so there has to be policy behind it. I agree with you completely that, you know, there has to be structure, there has to have, it has to be identified. But the current policy as written is so outdated that it doesn't allow for us that flexibility, that movement, and the dynamic nature, because I've had this conversation with Mr. Harris and Mr. Larragueta. I've had it with Mr. Jimenez. There are segments, and the mayor and I have had this conversation. There are segments in this community, or I mean this country, that have been so stalemated over the last 2 years that they're just dead still. We've been very fortunate in the last year and a half that at least our casinos were open. Places could come here, and we had room tax. We were able to move forward. And so we should take advantage of those things, of those opportunities, because there has been an evolution of how business is being done now, marketing, sales, you name it. And so we need to and special events plays a special role into that. And going and getting sometimes the small fish, to your point, Mr. Esquaga, is that you go get, or I'll use my example. You go get a small local event. You provide, show them that the facilities are good, the people who like the area, and that, and then they make way to an event producer that's going to say, well, you know, Reno was really good. We're going to go back there, but I'm going to take my bigger event, and it subsequently works that way. And we've always seen that. You know, they'll do a small local or a statewide event and conference, and then they'll bring us a regional, and then they'll bring us a national. And so that's the way we need to continue to think. And we just need to now shift our sales, how we've done that for sales for many, many years, to special events. And so those are my comments. Mr. Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to go back to something that Mayor Sheevy said as well, and it's about the local population not understanding what a DMO does. That is not unique to this location, and I'm sure Charles knows from his experience as well, and I do as well. That doesn't mean that there's not opportunity there. I'm not sure if it's accomplished by throwing money necessarily at it. I think it's work that Ben's doing in the PR side. It's moving, as we heard from our strategic retreat, much more to a management kind of an organization. It's how we tell our stories. DMOs have always been good historically at outbound messaging. We have not been good at messaging about our organizations. We're all going through that now. Again, I don't think it's necessarily money that you throw at that that's going to solve that problem. I'm not disagreeing with the small, yeah, exactly. And I think the work that Charles, you're doing with your team, and Ben, give him a shout out as well. You guys are really pushing that message within the local community, and that's how you change the perceptions of what residents think we do or don't do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Harris.
Thank you for stealing my thunder, Andy. Mayor, what the biggest joke in our industry, the biggest joke in our industry is our own families don't understand what DMOs do. And so that is true across the country. That is not unique. Couple things here. One is, I hope that this board is an extension of our staff as ambassadors for what we do and the impact that we do have in this community. This staff has punched well above its weight for a long time to do amazing work, and we continue to do really good stuff to elevate this destination. But at the outset of this discussion, we talked about, one, special events are important. That's part of our DNA in the strategic plan moving forward, which was endorsed by the board. Two, we need to audit. We need to update those requirements so that we can make it relevant for today's needs. And that's part of that process. So I applaud the board. It's a great discussion. But let us go through that process to be able to get there, and we will activate that come the next round. And if there's any local special events that within the current fiscal budget that meet the requirements that we're set up for, apply. That's why we have that contingency. And to Mr. Squaga, please apply, because that's why we set that aside.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sifraza?
I'm going to try a motion. And
Yes.
I just want to say before I do that, I really appreciate the comments by everyone, actually, because Board Member Esquaga, you made some really good points, and they've sunk in with me about the process. I think it's actually very, very important that we do go through that. I don't know if TEDx reached out to me a long time ago. I don't know if they did. And actually, Board Member Silver, you had reached out to me about it. So I don't know if they did it, but I'm just sympathetic. I don't know if they didn't know the process, but anyway.
They were informed, Ann Silver for the record, they were informed and they didn't complete the process.
Well, that's
I'm on the committee, so.
Okay.
The only thing I can say to that is that I was never approached, but I was asked by a board member, and I said, have them apply. I mean, I tried to send them through the system right away.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and try this first motion, tweak it a little bit to establish a new special event incentive fund program at the $500,000, which will roll over to next fiscal year. Let's roll it over to next fiscal year. That can be used to attract events to Washoe County that will drive an increase in room nights, bring awareness to our destination, enhance arts, culture, heritage, and social diversity, as well as align with the RSCVA's brand. I'd probably just add something local. I don't know if somebody wants to do a word twist to that, maybe a category for local and nonprofits. The audit will include assessing the need for resources such as dedicated staff to direct the program and to sell Washoe County to event producers. The only thing I would add with staff's recommendation is to do the audit internally and also set up a special events committee with 3 members from the board along with staff. That will come back and Chairman saying 4. I know it has to be agendized. Actually, those committees work very, very well at the airport, you guys, and they're subject to the open meeting law, and they worked very well for us. So I would, maybe the subcommittee, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bisecting this, but maybe the subcommittee portion comes back at the next agenda to appoint the subcommittee, and then they can determine when it comes back to the board with the new policies, and they can make recommendations to this full board on the new policies, but this special events committee would really dive into it and make those recommendations to the full board. So I hope I can.
So that's a motion. So I've got a very detailed motion, but I think staff wants get some clarity.
Yeah, so thank you for the motion. I just want to, because it affects us in the planning process, right? So if we're going to roll that money over, and I was asking, Bob quietly, is if you're asking if that money is for new events, right? And remember, I was asking, are we funding current events, local events, or new events? If the motion involves new events, then that means that we need a resource to be able to have a person to go out and do that. And that affects our budget in the planning process for an additional body or bodies that would help support going out and finding new events. And that's why I'm asking that question.
I don't think she's.
For all events.
Yeah, I don't think it's new events of us finding or creating events. I think she used intention of new events that procure here, or whatever. Right. But all events. Let's just make it all events for that matter. I'm very kind of. We'll keep it vague, and then we can bring it back and allow. Well, what we'll do is allow for the subcommittee to kind of give the structure to it.
I can try the motion again.
No, I think you're good. No, I think we're good. I think we beat this horse plenty.
I'll second that motion.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I've got a motion from Mr. Fraza, a second from Mr. Chapman. Any further discussion? I know I'm not going to look for anybody's hands. I'm closing my eyes. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much for the very hearted, spirited conversation this morning, everybody. I think it was very, very well intended. Mr. Harris, thank you for that. We are going to move on to the last part of our agenda and business today, which I'd like to get before we're almost there, 4 minutes. We can get this done. Mr. Kennedy, please take us into the election of the RSCVA treasurer.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So per NRS 244A 611, the RSCVA is required to have a secretary and a treasurer. Those roles were both previously held by Mr. Sturbins, who's no longer on our board, so we need to fill those roles. They can be combined, and just practically speaking, the the duties and obligations of the secretary and treasurer are generally delegated and fulfilled by staff, so it's not a huge commitment. Typically, the treasurer is on the finance committee, but otherwise, staff handles most of those duties. Assuming that you want to combine the two roles, the process would be a motion to combine secretary treasurer into, to have one individual fill both roles. If that motion passes, the chair will open up the floor for nominations. Nominations are taken. The chair closes nominations, and then the board will vote.
Okay. All right.
Who wants it?
I'm nominating Stephen Esquaga. He's been so quiet today.
I know.
The quiet one always gets the job.
Second that.
All right, we've got a nomination. Is there any further nominations for there?
We first need to vote.
Well, we have nominated, we're opening nominations, so there's nominations, so we can nominate any member of board members before I close nominations. So nominations are currently open. I've nominated Mr. Esquaga. Is there any other nominations on the floor?
Well, we have secretary and treasurer.
Yeah, but we have to,
we
we've always combined them, so I've always assumed that we're combining them, so.
Motion to combine the secretary and
Yes.
treasurer.
Okay, so I've got a motion from, man, this is getting out of control. This is like a rodeo now. All right, so I've got a motion from Ms. Safraza. I do have a second to combine the secretary and treasurer. I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now I'm going to open nominations.
Can I
Nominations.
make a motion?
No,
to
you
nominate
can't.
Ms. Keel?
Hey, I would say Shannon, she can't hear us.
Oh, yeah? All right, so we got nominations for Esquaga and Keel on the floor.
Shannon's laughing, so she hears us.
She can hear that. She's smiling. She can hear it.
She can hear that. I only heard the one part. That's it.
All right, so I've got nominations for Mr. Esquaga and Mrs. Keel on the floor. I'll close nominations if they're seeing no further. I will take a motion at this time for one of the members to represent Secretary or Treasurer, Ms. Keel or Mr. Esquaga. Your choice. Go ahead.
I move to appoint member Esquaga, who is also currently serving on the finance subcommittee with me.
I think that's a wonderful idea. I'll second that motion. All those in favor of Mr. Esquaga serving as the Secretary and Treasurer of the RSCVA, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Aye. Congratulations, Mr. Esquaga. I'm so glad. Thank you for volunteering for that position. We're really happy to have you on that board. All right, moving forward, we are on to item G. This is item G, this is board member comments regarding future items. I would like a full, I know we're going to come back in the special meeting. We're going to have a discussion about the continuation of our marketing contract with BVK and what the outlook of that looks like. So Ms. Ernie, if we can bring that back with Mr. Harris and have a discussion about BVK. And then I would, Ms. Yeager, I would like a full financial presentation at your earliest convenience so that we can start looking at budget as it pertains to special events funding, sales, and augmenting the budget, especially with grant funding coming in. Is there anything further that I missed? Madam Mayor.
I really do.
Turn your mic on.
To do.
Microphone.
Sorry. I really do would like to possibly put on there, bring your convention home campaign, some sort of local type of campaign to, I heard it was incredibly successful, and I just like that we can message locally. Think about how many people out there belong to conferences and conventions and all those things, right? That probably go all the time and didn't think about bringing one right home. So I'd love to see a discussion on that if we could do a local campaign.
All right. Mr. Chapman.
I'd like to put an item on the future agenda, I'm not sure exactly when, but to come and speak to this board about some transportation infrastructure needs that we have in the incline portion of Washoe County. I've had a conversation with you, Chair Lucy, as well as Commissioner Hill about this, and I know she is very passionate about it, as are we. One thing I look at, the RSCVA does a great job in marketing the region and talking about Tahoe, kind of a little bit of the sizzle on the steak. I'd like to see some investment in the grill, and really transportation, other than workforce housing, is the number one issue that we have in Tahoe right now. We're very focused on it. We're trying to figure out some spring microtransit components right now, which we'll get to, but it's really fiscal year 22-23. We're having conversations with Bill Thompson as well at RTC. RTC does fund some dollars that come obviously to Tahoe in support of Placer County TART running that. But I would like to have a conversation with this board about some of those needs that we are having up there and where the RSCVA can play a role. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you. Hey, I just, because a little older board member here, I can't remember everything about our budgets. Is there any way we could get some information in the packets prior to the meeting or something that gives us, so we don't guess at numbers, or so we make it easy for you guys? Because you probably get redundancy with me asking a bunch of dumb questions because I can't remember. So is there any way to get more information?
One of the things we do at the county, Ms. Jager, and I would recommend this, is that maybe you have, one-off meetings or two-off meetings with each board member to do a full budget review. I've done it with staff and at their convenience and at your convenience as well, to really kind of run them through revenues and expenditures for each fiscal year so that we know where our finances are, where our assets are, and that kind of thing. It's helpful for me going into budget season, so I can, for 24 different departments, we know how to allocate. So it's important. So if we can do that for some staff that want it, and those that don't, I think that would be helpful. I would agree.
Absolutely, and board members are welcome to reach out to me anytime for budget information. I think having those individual meetings would be really great, so I'd like to start coordinating that with board members that are interested as soon as possible.
Perfect. Any further requests from any board members? Nope. All right. With that, Mr. Harris.
I just want to say, great discussions today by everybody. Thank you. I just also want to thank Meira for subbing in as our temporary board clerk. Hadn't done it before and did a great job, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Today was a rodeo, and you did a great job. Rode this horse well. Yes, sir.
I just want to let everybody know that I used to work with her, and I also worked with Gina. So you can tell I've been around a long time. And she's very solid, by the way. You've got a great little gal there and another great gal. So thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. All right, seeing nothing further, is there any public comment signed in for our final public comment?
Yes,
right.
we have one more.
All right, final public comment.
Chris Hoff, representing Barracuda Championship. Thank you, board, for allowing me some time. Mr. Chairman, I'll try and keep the end of the rodeo very short, even though you're leaving. That's okay. A couple quick things I wanted to bring to the board's attention when it comes to special event funding. And the first one has to do with the change in timing of funding. It used to be the funding cycle went on a calendar year, and completely understand switching to fiscal year and making it fit into your budgets. But I want to make sure you guys are aware that a large part and a busy part of the event calendar comes in July and August. And a huge part of the funding requests that we put in with the marketing department has to do with marketing initiatives that involve quite a ramp-up time. And discovering at the end of May, sometimes start of June, what the funds might be, and what, oftentimes the funds are a different amount than what's been applied for, and therefore the marketing plans change, and a lot of that is in conjunction with Christina and her team, and that takes time. And so I just want to make sure you guys are aware that the effectiveness oftentimes of these marketing campaigns could be affected by the late timing. So if there's any way to, I don't know, as you look at this revamp in the policy and looking at this huge chunk that takes place in June, July, and August as far as special events, and recognizing that those that fall in July and August, those are not going to be necessarily awarded till fairly late in their planning cycle. So I'm not looking for, an additional funding cycle or anything like that, but think about that when you take a look at your policy. And the second piece is I want to stress and perhaps caution making the policy such a black and white policy when it comes to, just grab one out of there, where an event may take place. There's no secret. We moved a couple years ago up to Truckee, California. We have found a great home up there. Players, everybody love the golf course, but you know what they continue to love just as much is coming to Reno and going to Lake Tahoe. So as you look at these boundaries of where an event must take place, please consider the impact outside of just where that event is. Our event is broadcast globally, live on Golf Channel, 12 hours this year. We will be over 850 million households in the US. We'll be over 2 billion households across the world where Golf Channel is available, where our broadcast is available, where your community is going to be seen. I encourage Christina, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I think we put together a fantastic B-roll or whatever from the last 2 years specifically, because we heard the comments about you take place in California. No, sorry, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm the rodeo clown. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. We continue to talk about Reno. We continue to talk about Lake Tahoe in the broadcast. It's a huge part of it. So as you look at these policy revisions, please consider it, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hoff. And I will, here, I'll finish the rodeo for you, okay? But my brother-in-law and father-in-law are major golfers, live in Omaha, have both come and visited me because they've seen the Barracuda on TV. And they say, you got two big tournaments. You've got the Century Tournament and Barracuda. And so that's an important thing. I have family members that are seeing this across the country. So that is a good thing. We've done a wonderful job in partnership with them over the years. But to your agreement, we have to move forward. We've already talked about special events. We're adjourned, everybody. Thanks very much for coming today. Out of here. On the next board meetings. So they don't just come to see you? No, I was going to say, no, they never do. They never do. Trust me.